Hey, everybody. I'm Bonnie Gauss, and I'm here with the CEO of Skellig Automation, Paul. Today, we want to talk to you about AI.
I'm excited to get into it because, it's something I've certainly been playing around with a bit and trying to figure out use cases. Is it going to kill us? Is it going to save us? Is it going to be a revolution? Is it, hollow? How do you apply it? Can you validate it? So
That's the big question, right?
exactly.
A lot of people talk about AI right now. It's kind of the industry buzzword in every industry. Everyone's talking about how they want to use AI so they can revolutionize manufacturing, so they can revolutionize how they do their everyday work. However, whenever you listen to them, whenever you really listen, they're not really giving any solutions or use cases.
I'm no AI expert, but I do dabble and play around with it. If I was building a pharmaceutical facility, would I put AI into that facility to make decisions on a drug product? No. Would I put it tied into like a unified namespace, a lot of data being generated to prompt operators? Hey, you might want to look at this. You might want to look at that. Consider this to improve the yield. That valve's about to break in 4 days. Yes, I would use it in that capacity. But AI, I do not think we're even close to something that's validatable. The large language models, sorry, they are not like validatable in my opinion. And I am not saying this as an AI expert. I'm just saying this is like someone with maybe a boundary in my understanding, but at the same time, I would not be comfortable. So if some AI expert was to pitch me saying like, oh, let's build a facility and let's make it the best. Let's stick AI in there. I'd be like, no, please no. Let's get good at structuring data. Let's get good at machine learning. We can program boundaries in a machine learning algorithm. Then someone might start thinking that like, well, that's kind of a version of AI. I think when you and I are talking about AI, we're talking about the large language models, right?
Mhm.
Like ChatGPT, GPT-4, that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
I've been playing with it a lot and I found myself going back to Google a lot more. I will say I'm a big fan of ChatGPT and I like using that, but I've tried a couple of them. Like I played around with Perplexity. It's okay. I use the Bing Copilot one. It's not great. The one that I find the least amount of use for is actually Microsoft's Copilot. We've been trying to try it out inside Skellig and I can't put it to use. And like, I've been trying to use it to help me with some documentation. I've been trying to, hey, can you summarize this for me? And I don't trust the output. I don't like what I see. I can't get it to find stuff for me. And it just, all I've met with is boundaries, I feel like. So the shine from AI has really come off for me. And I think that's true for a lot of people. Now we're into the cold, hard application. So you want to be very careful, in my view, that even myself, that I don't overcorrect back out of AI. We just want to be cautious and try to avoid doing anything really dumb with it, like let it control something important.
What I think is probably most applicable to the life sciences is AI ever going to be able to do what an automation engineer does at a level that it can be validated, that we can trust our medicine to be made by something in a system that has been coded by a computer?
I hope I don't mess up the code. It's the one from Arthur C. Clarke, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And
Mhm.
if you think about showing someone 10 years ago what we can do today with ChatGPT, I think that's pretty incredible. So I wonder if you give us another 10 years or you give the industry 10 years, where can they get to? There is a bit of a problem. I'm trying to keep up with this stuff. A couple of years ago, we tried to build dashboards in Skellig internally for management. I was a pretty big proponent of it. I was like, this is going to be great. We're going to be able to make decisions off of dashboards. Basically, one of the directors, she turned around, she goes, yeah, I don't trust it. So I'm not going to make a decision based on what this is telling me. And then the penny dropped and she was right. I know she was right, because if you can't trust how it got to the answer, that's the whole crux of where I totally agree with you on the validation side of it. Like, we can't go next or near that. Even if the answer is ready and it's perfect every time, I want to see it in parallel to something where a human being is making a drug or in control of making a drug product, along with maybe a machine learning algorithm at best that's heavily validated. And then over time, the AI is able to predict and make. But even at that stage, right, that's where you start to get into that scary science fiction stuff. So I don't think we're quite there yet. I'm in the camp of AI does scare me a little bit. So where are you in that camp, actually? Because I think that would be helpful. I think it could get good enough to be really freaking scary and in the not so distant future. Where do you stand on that?
AI, as I see it now, doesn't scare me. However, maybe that's because whenever I think of use cases, whenever I think of how are we going to use this,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we know how to use an actual artificial intelligence yet in broader scope.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I think we need to think outside of the box. We are applying AI to the way that we work now. We say, how are we going to use it? And I don't know, because I don't know how I'm going to be working in a few years.
Oh, absolutely not.
Whoever can find that new way of working, they're going to blow the industry up. It's going to be crazy.
Joe, when things get weird and crazy like that, I know I've referenced this before in meetings in Skellig. It's totally stolen from Charlie Munger. He wrote this book in 1776 and it's still relevant. And whenever I think about something like this, I always just try to, in my own mind, try to tie it back to where's the value? How do you create some value with this? You keep it very basic. It's funny, yeah, to be very flippant about AI and the difference between machine learning and large language models. I've heard people jokingly call it, well, it's just a large CSV file with a lot of numbers and a heavy amount of computing power. But I think the purpose that it's serving right now for those smart people that are behind it is it's helping to harvest a lot of data, and it's helping to create this data set of how are people using it? What kind of decisions are they making? What are the patterns here? And how do we start to iterate and improve this? But can it discover some new science yet? Absolutely not. It does seem like we're just at the very beginning of artificial intelligence, not just even in terms of what it can do, but how to think about it. I don't know yet how to think about it properly. And we're having this discussion because we need to share ideas on like what's a healthy mental approach to this or mindset to this thing.
I asked a bunch of Skellig employees, can you guys give me some use cases for AI in our industry? We got a bunch of different responses. Some people suggested it could eventually help us do the kind of coding that you see everywhere, right? The stuff that's common between plants. There were talks of using it to go through reports to identify trends. And you see that a lot already in medical stuff. People talk about, oh, well, they put this into an AI and this person's going to get sick, or they have a tumor that the machine doesn't quite see yet. But the AI can tell what to do there. So they use it as predictive. Maybe you could do stuff like that with reports or with your process. You can see that something may be going wrong soon, and you can do like an early alert system. That could be a great use case for AI for the life sciences. But I don't think that we're ever going to be able to fully automate the processes, at least not within the complete lack of guardrails that we have now. The FDA would never go for it.
Oh, God, no. I think what you just described there sounds to me like a bit of machine learning. Because is this parameter larger than that one? If yes, then do this. Having large language models do that seems potentially unpredictable. You know, I'm really disappointed in Copilot. I don't know what's going on. I'm sure somebody does. Like, why is it so bad? The internal version of Copilot. It's supposed to be, it's because we have Office 365, right? And I asked our IT guys, hey, can I get the Copilot one, the paid one, because I want to play with it. And even for prepping for one of the articles I promised you I would write, I was asking it for quotes. I was trying to get prep and I was like, hey, can you give me some quotes from W. Edwards Deming? And I was like, I don't know who that person is because my experience with Copilot, I do trust ChatGPT more when it's like getting me quotes and stuff. But do I trust it enough to say, hey, this is a quote from someone? Like that's where healthier boundaries might be useful. You can use it to standardize code and all sorts of things. But as much as I was quick to absorb info about it at the start, I think now I'm super cautious about this stuff, especially where it applies to real tangible work. I had a client ask me, "Oh, what's the story of your SaaS tools? Are they just some AI thing?" I'm like, "No, they're not. They're
Oh,
they're just actual code doing actual
yes,
stuff that's been actually tested, that actually has been battle hardened by engineers, and it's not AI."
it's not. As someone who has tested
And
some of our chief software engineers' work very extensively in the past myself, he's a brilliant coder.
internally, we are trying to train a GPT. It's not game day ready yet. The other side of it too is like things like writing a driver or ingesting some kind of user manual for a thing you want to map
Yeah.
data parameters to, and or asking it a technical question about that. It should be able to give you back a decent answer, which does help you piece
Yeah.
things together. I did hear via Walker Reynolds, he was saying that a great example of it. I know his people use it a lot. I think that's very cool. We haven't gotten our heads around it yet. Tesla use it to standardize their engineers' output. So let's say you wrote some code and I wrote some code. There's going to be some slight differences. Maybe you use tabs, I use spaces, but the AI would consolidate it. I think that's cool. But as long as it's then entering into some kind of life cycle testing where
Hmm.
you're going to catch if the AI did it right 90% of the time, but got bored or lazy or whatever they say it can do now. We're in that period right now where we're really collectively understanding a bit more about how to think about this and figuring out
Yes.
some real limitations of AI. I have to give Quartec.ai credit for this one. I saw one of their guys, I think it was Blair Fraser, give a talk. They're into like predictive analytics and stuff like that, and they use AI. But I thought it was really cool the way they talked about it, because of course the first question in life is, "Oh yeah, so that's cool. Can you validate it?" And they talked about AI in a glass box, so like that you could validate the algorithms, you could validate how it was making choices and decisions. I think you can do that for machine learning, but it doesn't feel like you can do it for large language models. And I don't know what ChatGPT 5 is going to represent and if you can validate that, but I inherently just distrust AI a lot more now. Because I did think when it first came out, I was like, okay, we're going to go nuts on this. It's going to be great. I want every Skellig engineer trying to use this, and then left the foot off the gas on that a bit because I just wanted to see it play out a little bit more. I do bring it up in conversations with engineers, but I'm never forcing anyone, "Hey, you should definitely be using this. Make me more money, like do more with less." Even on the documentation side, like again, choice is there. Would we have said, yes, please use AI if Bjorn or Jack had said, "Oh my God, like we got to use AI to do this doc tool. It's going to be great." But we didn't. Their technical choice has been to not, like AI is not in the doc tool. It's just code
Yeah.
and it's taking stuff from automation. And that's the part that's credible then because, oh, okay, I can see the code that's making that choice over and over again. So if I test it a couple of times, it's not guessing at what the next potential answer should be. So therefore it's going to guess wrong at some point. That makes it validatable to me.
I think that's going to be where we run into a lot of issues, especially in our industry, notoriously slow. You hear me talk about it all the time. Very
I
frustrating.
like that it's slow. I like that
I
it's slow.
do I do like that it's slow for some reasons because you do want to be safe with people's lives. You
Yeah.
want to make sure that you're creating good medicine. It's not going to hurt
Yeah.
people.
The same way you don't want a
That
nuclear reactor being controlled by,
right. No, exactly. You want to make sure
yeah.
that what you're creating is pure, is good, and does what you say it does. As we move into trying to use AI in this space, I think we're going to run into a regulatory nightmare.
There's this guy, Ray Kurzweil, and he's a futurist or the chief engineer at Google. He wrote a book called The Singularity, which is all about when machines become smarter than humans and what's that inflection point. One of the things he predicts for like life sciences is once we can keep advancing things like AI and machine learning, we're going to be able to understand the human body a lot better
Mhm.
to the point where we'll be able to perfectly understand how a molecule or a drug might react to it.
Yeah.
So then instead of a clinical trial being 4 years, it can be an hour. That's pretty cool to think about. I think my mindset would be, I see you could maybe do this, but prove it to me.
Yeah.
And I could see, even if it was a headline today that like this was possible, Would you take a drug that an hour later it recommended? Probably not, and probably wouldn't get FDA approval. But 4 years from now, with 4 years of it making consistent decisions in line with what a clinical trial said, I could see something like that.
If I had to take a guess as to how we might see that play out, I think of orphan drugs, right?
Yeah.
So you have people with incredibly rare diseases. There's one person on the planet who has this disease. And some manufacturers like Bristol Myers Squibb makes orphan drugs
Hmm.
for really rare diseases. On one hand, you don't want to exploit, right? You don't want to exploit people's suffering. You don't want to use them but I think that some people who are looking for any way to be cured or any way to prolong their lives,
Hmm.
I think you may see these companies using AI to develop these orphan drugs that are perfectly tailored to this person, right? You can feed your DNA into a machine
Hmm.
and say you need it to do this. It can run all of its model and predictive stuff. It can give you a drug. Let's say they take that medicine
Hmm.
and it works. It would probably be used to, develop these drugs to cure really rare diseases,
Hmm.
but eventually be the ultimate personalization of medicine. You can just give your DNA and you're like, here, fix me.
Yeah.
And they give you the medicine that can fix you based off of your genome specifically.
I love that, right? These are kind of mind-bending concepts that we get to even ideate on because of the platform. Oh, AI is a thing now, and it's kind of aware. What's the inflection point for you, though, that would say that person's in safe hands? Because right now we have the best-in-class AI that it's questionable whether it could multiply two numbers and get the same answer consistently,
Yeah.
or definitely derive a quote and definitely attribute it appropriately to the right author. Is there an inflection point in the future? God forbid you or one of your loved ones. How would you get to
Yeah.
that trustworthiness?
That's a question that everyone's going to have to ask.
Hmm.
Right now, even with the advent of medical advancements and since COVID started,
Hmm.
we've produced medicine that you have a social and political stigma to it that
Hmm.
can be really confusing when you're in the life sciences space where you see these things being produced. So I trust it, but are people from where I grew up, are they ever going to trust it?
What do you really trust there? Do you trust the paperwork, or do you trust the body of the collective of individuals that you've seen them in the cafeteria? They give a shit.
Yeah.
They deeply
Yeah.
give a shit. Because I think when you strip it all away, that's what I trust. It's the
Yeah.
people that work in these facilities that they really actually care. The operators really care. They're really careful. The management really cares. It's not the documentation that makes me feel safe. So
No.
when I think about AI, I think about maybe replacing the documentation, the checks and balance. I think it's going to take us quite a while to get our heads around. Can you really trust the output from that artificial intelligence on that judgment call that, yes, this drug is safe or
Mhm.
it's made right? But I do trust machine learning. I do trust that if this parameter is larger than that, it's in or it's out of spec.
Mhm.
So machine learning is as far as my comfort carries me right now. But as
Yeah.
again, I'm not an expert. This is just my caveat as someone who's associated with the industry, but not on the bleeding edge of what's possible.
I know for me, there is an element of I'm working with the people around me and I have lunch with this person and I see how much he cares about his work.
Hmm.
I see him fighting with his boss
Hmm.
through, the window to the office. I see him fighting with him because no, he wants more testing for this. You're not going to risk assess me out of testing
Right.
this because it's really important
Yeah.
at all levels of the process. You see this with even the small stuff that the general public might not think about. And just the minutiae of the process. And there are people fighting for every small bit of it, and people who genuinely care not only about other people's lives, but for what they do, because it is a grander sense of purpose.
Hmm.
Maybe there's something to that as well. And AI doesn't have a sense of like what it wants to be, right? It just is what it is. There's an element of aspiration there. And
Right.
with people, like, I think of myself in a certain way. So I have a personal moral code that dictates how I do work,
Mhm.
especially how I've done work in a field that people depend on
Mhm.
to live in a very real way, that if it goes wrong, I see the very real effects of what happens when medical stuff does go wrong. I live with someone who works in the emergency room.
Mhm.
I see it from beginning to end.
I think it's incredible. Yeah. But it does, and I will say kudos to validation people or quality people. It is hard to be you because everyone's kind of looking at you go, oh God, what are they going to say? And then like, oh, we need more we need to do this testing again. Ah, shit, and you like the check and balance of it. And you like that another human being that really cares is in at every step of the process is keeping an eye on it because you could make any kind of mistake. You could even make a perfect product, put it in the wrong bottle or the wrong dilution and send it out. Like anything could happen. There are so many
Yeah.
opportunities for failure. It's quite
Yes.
incredible.
I think that's why I get so upset about what's going on in the airline industry.
Oh, I was wondering if you're going to go there. Yeah, I want to go there. Let's talk about that for a minute. Mhm.
Because that's another highly regulated industry that has completely failed to maintain those quality standards. So that's something that we would need to be so cautious of in the life sciences. It does go back to quality assurance. You have to have people in quality who really care, who, whenever they're doing their risk assessments, they're not looking at the risk of money, right? They're not. And maybe there's something to that.
But okay,
Because
there is.
AI doesn't care
Right.
how much money you lose, or it doesn't care about people. It's going to weigh the risk of, well, if we do this, it's going to cost us billions and billions of dollars. So it's probably not worth the risk, because whenever you do functional safety, right? I did functional safety for a while in the agricultural industry when I worked with like ammonium nitrate. You look at functional safety stuff, and companies assign a dollar value to human life.
Mhm.
And I know when I was doing research, like with automakers, they do a recall whenever the amount it would
Oh yeah.
cost them
Okay.
to pay out like an insurance claim, it is more expensive than recalling the product. And I think it was like $500,000 was the value of a human life, right? And an AI is going to do that.
Exactly. It's so interesting to me what's happening about Boeing. I'm totally stuck in my head about it. My Google feed is full of Boeing because it's so fascinating. You could take this and you hear these essentially nerds from the early 80s going like, oh my God, this is the best company ever. Oh, they really care. We make an engineering recommendation and it gets backed. And then it all changed with the McDonnell Douglas merger. And it changed from engineering to financial engineering. And that is totally there. You could totally draw a parallel with AI, where someone in a boardroom or top level in a life sciences company could essentially say, like, okay, let's start leveraging AI en masse, but let's put a little twist on it. Let's use it for financial engineering. And next thing we start to train those models around like really, yes, exactly, attributing a value to a human life. And you play a numbers game to just get ahead of the curve, and you get medicine out faster, maybe you get more done. Oh my God, blowing the world's mind by having more cures for more things. But what are those checks and balances under the hood? Exactly. And like the thing with Boeing that's really interesting to me is it's not like on day one of that takeover or merger, you start to see the business results change. It took a long time. And I think that's the same thing that could happen in life sciences, where if we overstep our boundary of competence in terms of what's possible, what can we validate, and we go too far too soon, it's really going to build up, it's going to snowball into something that like just becomes the way we work now. That's where it starts to get really, really difficult, because to compete, then you've created this new economy that's, means that quality people, validation, the people aspect of that matters less and less, and you can just automate it all. I think that's where it gets tricky, that like we need a healthy boundary around like, let's make progress, let's use these things, but Let's develop them in parallel and bring them into the fold as we can validate them. I think validation has to, all that stuff that we know about validation, that's extremely important in the adoption of AI.
There are a couple things we can't discount when
Mm-hmm.
we think about this. One, people already think that the pharmaceutical industry wants to wring every dime they can get out of them. And it's no wonder that they think that. Look at the cost of medicine. It's insane. It's why we have our company vision is to make medicine more accessible and affordable for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that we want to do that is by making manufacturing less costly. But something that we will have to be cautious of is we don't want to be over efficient. We start to miss stuff, and there is a line.
There is. But
And
that's the joy of engineering. That's the joy of it. Like, can we make it better? Can we improve? Can we think about this? Can we use this tool?
yeah,
Okay, if we use this tool, how do we know it's going to work this time every time? That there's a joy in that, and that's what being an engineer is. And we could make a huge, huge difference.
but also you have to consider not only do you have this perception of the pharmaceutical executives, but also look at the people who stand at the head, like the tech bros,
Mhm.
right? Are you going to trust these people with your life? Because the culture of these communities can be really toxic to some people. I don't trust them to have my best interest in mind whenever they're making decisions.
Yes. Like there are cultural groups that don't trust medicine, and there's some data to back this up. Trust, building trust, being open and transparent around how you got to the answer. It is possible to dramatically improve things. It is possible to apply AI, go into it with an open mind, but don't go into it with like, it's going to revolutionize everything and we're only going to use this from now on and it's going to be magically brilliant. Cautious optimism.
Cautious optimism.
Yeah,
Well, I think that's a good way for us to end our conversation today. I don't want to keep you for too long.
no worries.
I think we'll have another one of these soon. If anyone has any questions, feel free to comment down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you soon.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.